Guys, please confirm to me. All of you get my voice on the screen. Guys, please check it. All of you get my voice on the screen. Those are attending in online. Yeah, I'm getting delay. Don't worry. Right, sir. Right. Good morning, guys. And today only maximum delay. Then tomorrow onwards, will not get this. Why? Because and today at 10 to 11:30, some small demo class was completed there. So due to that reason, mad with this classes delay. Don't worry. And tomorrow onwards, you will not get any delay for it. Not worry for it. All right, sir. Then meanwhile, uh, 1 minute. All right, and so in the last session, what we completed there, what exactly the content we completed in the last session, I think we are discussing about uh, tiered architectures we understood there, like one tier architecture, two tier architecture, and so on. N-tier architecture, that part we understood. All right, sir. Then anyway, then after that we started our content, design models for web applications. If you want to prepare web applications, then we are able to use web application development models or design models. How many design models are existed there actually? Model 1 architecture, model 2 architecture. They are the two development design architectures models are existed. Now here we have to understand what exactly these design models. What are these design models actually? Observe carefully. First one is first one is model 1 architecture. It is a old architecture to prepare web applications. It is a old architecture to prepare web applications. What is this architecture actually? What is the meaning of this particular architecture? See, observe this clearly. Understand this. For example, this is a client. This is client. Now this is server, and here we are having a database. Okay. Now here inside this server, this is a client. Right, so now this is server side application anyway. This is a database. Fine. Now at a server side, what is available there? This is a controller, and this is model part. Okay. Now here database logic or database is existed now. Observe carefully. In a model 1 architecture, controller should be a JSP page, not a servlet. Controller is what now? A JSP page. Now here model part is like what there? A Java bean. There only our application logic, business logic is available. Database operations are also be implemented there. Now here, what happened there? When we submit a request from client to the server, controller will take the responsibility. That is a JSP page will take the responsibility. And JSP page will identify the respective model component, and Java pin, that means model component, will interact with the database and it able to perform some database operations, and some results will be taken back. Some results are coming back from this. Results are available to model. Now model will submit that results back to the respective controller. Finally, controller will give that response back to the respective client. This is an outdated model and old model, completely deprecated model, old model. Now here I want to introduce some content. Can I try to understand this clearly? In this model, who is controller? No, who is a front controller? Front controller in the sense is a front person to take request from client, processing that request. He is the first person in our application. Who is that front controller? A JSP page is acting as a front controller or not? A JSP page is acting as a front controller. Okay, fine. JSP page is processing the total request. JSP page is responsible for processing the total request. Observe carefully. JSP, this total architecture is called as page centric architecture. This architecture is called as what there? Page centric architecture. Why? Because single JSP page is taking the request and is handling the total request. Everything is taken care by JSP page. Here the centric is on what? No, JSP. JSP page is a centric. That's why this is a page centric architecture. Page centric architecture. Apart from this is like what? No, JSP front. This architecture is also be called as what? No, JSP front architecture. Why JSP front architecture? Here a JSP page is a front controller. JSP page is what? No, front controller to take that request, to handle that request, and to give some response back to the respective client. This is model 1 architecture. Some drawbacks are available with the model 1 architecture. What are the drawbacks with the model 1 architecture? It is an outdated architecture where a JSP page is acting as a controller. All JSP capabilities are not sufficient to act as a controller in this type of applications. JSP page is mainly for presentation purpose, not for the sake of like what? No, controller. So all JSP capabilities are not sufficient to act as controller. That's the point I'm telling you. So JSP pages are not sufficient. So here itself the problem is available. Okay. So because of these reasons, we cannot use this architecture for our enterprise application development. There we have to go for like what? No, another architecture. There we have to go for like what? No, another architecture. Now let's see this one clearly. What are the points here I'm telling to you clearly? In model 1 architecture, observe carefully. In this architecture, a JSP page is acting as front controller. So this architecture is called as JSP front architecture. This is one point. Second point is what there? In this architecture, one JSP page is controlling the complete web application. So this architecture is called as page centric architecture. So then another point is like what there? It is an outdated architecture. Nobody is using this architecture at present. So to overcome these problems only, we have to go for like what? No, model 2 architecture. What is this model 2 architecture? I'm telling that clearly. It is not an outdated architecture. At present, we are using this architecture. Now tell me, model 1 architecture is a page centric architecture or not? Model 1 architecture is what now? Page-centric architecture or not? Now here, this architecture is a servlet front architecture. Servlet front architecture. Here we are going to use a servlet to act as a first person to take receives, no? To take requests, no? This is like what there is servlet we are going to use. So now here we can understand servlet front architecture, and this architecture is also be called as is called as this architecture is like what there servlet centric architecture, Java centric architecture, or servlet centric architecture, servlet front architecture and servlet centric architecture. Observe carefully. Then what is this actually? In this architecture, in this case, we will use a servlet as a controller, a servlet as controller. Okay, because of the reasons here, we are able to use all these points. Now let me show a diagram here. Try to understand this diagram clearly. All of you observe carefully. This is like what I am telling to you, client. This is server, and this is a database. Okay, right, sir. This is a client, this is a server, this is database. Now at a server side application, we will use a controller. We will use a controller. There we are able to use viewport, and here we are able to use model part. Okay, this is like what their controller, and this is like what I'm there viewport. This is model part. Okay, now observe carefully. As a controller, we are going to use a servlet, not as a JSP base. We are going to use a servlet as a controller. Now here a set of JSP pages, set of JSP pages, set of JSP pages as viewport. Here we can use Java beans, of course JDBC, Hibernate, or maybe entity beans, and so on. All these things here we are able to use there as a model part. Their business logic and database logics both are going to be implemented. Okay, fine. What is this flow of execution here? When we submit requests from client to the server, controller will take all the requests. Controller will take all the requests. Okay, controller will identify the respective model component. Controller will activate that model component. Model component will execute some business logic and some database logic. Then it able to perform some number of database operations. It able to perform number of database operations. All the database operations are giving some results now. The results will be given back to the controller. After getting this, controller will identify a particular viewport to generate some dynamic response. When that response is available at JSP page, no, directly that viewport will submit some response back to the respective client. Now this is what exactly the content here. While preparing this response now, maybe the JSP pages may connect with a model component. They are able to get some data from model component, and they're able to put some data also into like what they're the model component. Okay, now this architecture is nothing but model 2 web application architecture. This architecture is called as like what there? Model 2 web application architecture. All of you are getting clarity or not? Fine. This model 2 web application architecture, model 2 web application architecture is also called as MVC architecture. This model 2 web application architecture is also be called as like what now? MVC architecture. Are you understanding from where MVC architecture is coming? MVC architecture is coming from model 2 web application architecture. MVC architecture is coming from model 2 web application architecture, not from any other one. Example for model 2 architecture is what? MVC. That means MVC architecture. Okay, fine. Next one is, I'm trying to say one conclusion here. What is that conclusion? No. And outside, some of the web frameworks like Struts, JSF, and so on are designed on the basis of model 2 architecture. Struts framework maybe, JSF framework maybe, all these things are designed on the basis of model 2 architecture. That is, they are designed on the basis of MVC architecture. That's why Struts, JSF are MVC based architectures, MVC based frameworks. They're also be called as like what now? MVC based frameworks. Right, sir. Now these are the points here we have to understand clearly. Then immediately we need to understand like what their MVC architecture clearly. MVC rules and regulations. Here we introduced already MVC architecture. Then here we need to understand MVC rules and regulations. Why? Because one time if you understand these MVC rules and regulations, then easily we are going to prepare applications on the basis of MVC. MVC architecture is nothing but model 2 web application architecture only, not any other one. Whatever the diagram I shown to you, that is model 2 architecture only, MVC architecture only. Now we have to follow a set of rules and regulations for MVC architecture. That means if we are trying to design any application on the basis of MVC, there we have to use MVC rules and regulations. Right, so there I'm telling you rule number 1. Listen guys, all of you listen carefully. In the diagram it is very clear that as a controller, which component we have used, sir? As a controller, which component we have used there? Servlet or not? Servlet will be used as what there? Controller. And viewport is what there? A set of HTML pages or JSP pages, whatever it may be. As a model component, what we are able to prepare there? Java beans maybe, Hibernate maybe, JDBC maybe, entity beans, or whatever it may be. All the things here we have used it. So these characters are fixed. In MVC based application, these characters are fixed. We have to use a servlet as controller. We should not use a JSP page as a controller. We must use a servlet as controller. We must use a set of JSP pages as viewport. We must use a set of JSP pages as viewport. We should not use a servlet as JSP viewport. Only JSP pages or HTML pages we have to use as what now? A viewport. Get my point or not? So these two are fixed. Should not interchange these two. We should not use JSP page as controller. Should not use a servlet as what there? No, viewport. This is rule number 1. We are understanding clearly. What is that rule number 1 here? Observe carefully. That rule number 1 would be, in MVC based web applications, we must use a servlet as a controller and a set of JSP pages as a viewport. That is point number 1. Now, point number 2. Point number 2. All right, sir. In MVC based application, now tell me, whatever the requests which are coming from clients, every request must be taken by controller or not? Every request must be reached to controller. Every request must be reached to controller. Understand my point here? Next one. Every response must be generated by viewport. Viewport is not acting as controller. Controller is not acting as what? No, viewport. Every request must be taken by controller. Every response must be generated by viewport. This is mandatory in the case of this MVC based applications. Right, sir. Observe carefully this point here. In MVC based web applications, every request must be trapped by controller. That means every request must be submitted to or must be sent to submitted to controller, must be submitted to controller, and every response must be generated by viewport. Every response must be generated by viewport. That's this is one point here we have to understand clearly. Now, point number 3. Observe carefully diagram. No, inside this diagram, controller should perform the database operations through the model component only. Controller should not interact with the database. Get my point or not? Controller should not interact with the database directly. Controller must interact with the database through what? No, model component only. Okay, right, sir. This is one point here. Fine. Apart from that, then what next one here? No. Anyway, JSP pages. Viewport is not responsible for database operations. Viewport is not responsible for what? Their database operations. Just it is for the sake of generating response only. Okay, fine. Here the point is what? Controller should not interact with the database directly. Controller should interact with the database through what? No, model component. Here we are giving respect to the model or not. By moving through this model component, we are performing database operations through model component, in the sense we are giving some respect to the model component or not. So because of that reason, controller in MVC based web applications, controller must interact with the database through model component only. Not possible to interact with the databases directly. Not possible to interact with the databases directly. Right, sir. Next, one more point I'm telling to you. Observe carefully. Controller will interact with the model part to set the data to the model components, not to get the data from model component. Just a flow of execution is coming back to the controller, but actually data, first client data will come to the controller. Controller will send the data to the model component where some Java beans are available. They will store that model data, but the data will not come back to the controller. There only data is existed. Right. The JSP pages, viewport, will interact with the model component to get data from model component, not to set data. Who will set data to the model component? No, controller. Who will get data from the model component? No, viewport. Sir, all of you get my point or not? To set data to the model component, we are going to use controller. But to get data from the model component, we are using like what their JSP. Say for example, I want to go for any website or web application, some registration form I will open. In the registration form, we will provide the data, username, user password, or maybe qualification or something else. Some details here we used to provide. We are providing some data in that user form. When I click on this button, login button, or maybe some register button, automatically request will come to the controller. In that controller, inside the request object, the total form data is available. Now this controller will get data from the request. Controller will send the data to the model component in our application. Maybe Java bin, registration pin is available. Inside this, we are able to keep some data. So controller will keep data inside the model component. Then what is the JSP page now? Anyway, my registration process is success. Whenever we are sending some success message now, then I want to display some registration details. username and maybe user qualification, some registration details also be I want to include. So how these JSP pages are getting that registration details? No, that registration details must be taken from model component or not? The registration details must be taken from what? Their model component. Am I right or not? So here the convention is what? Controller will set data to the model component, whereas viewport is able to get the data from the model component. This is a condition here we have to understand. In MVC based web applications, controller will interact with the model. Controller will interact with the model component in order to set data. In order to set data, but viewport will interact with the model component in order to get data. Controller part will set data inside the model component, and the JSP part will get data from the model component. Right, sir. Another one. All of listen carefully. In this page now, how many JSP pages we have used to prepare this viewport? Now tell me, how many JSP pages here we prepared now? Is that only one JSP page or more than one JSP page? More than one JSP page we can use or not? Observe carefully. Right, sir. More than one JSP page here we are using. Am I right or not? But where the condition is what? All the JSP pages we have to prepare without Java code. Without Java code. All the JSP pages must be provided with Java less. Java codeless. Without Java code only we have to prepare the JSP pages. We can use any number of JSP pages here. We are not having any problem, but all the JSP pages must be prepared without using Java code. With only by using JSP tags only. By using some JSP tag library only, we have to prepare the JSP pages. We should not provide any Java code inside what now? JSP pages. That is another rule here we have to use there. Right. Observe this carefully. In MVC based web applications, we have to prepare JSP pages as a viewport. We have to prepare JSP pages as viewport, but we must provide JSP pages without the Java code. Without Java code only, we have to prepare all JSP pages. Right. One more point. Again, I'm asking to you. In MVC based architecture, we are going to use number of JSP pages. Am I right or not? It's not like one or two number of JSP pages. More and more number of JSP pages we are using. Okay. But in between these JSP pages, we need to provide some communication or not? One page to another page, we have to navigate or not? So for example, in one page, if I put some hyperlink, no, if I click on hyperlink, automatically we will be moved to another page or not? Right. So here, what we are expecting there, one JSP page to another JSP page navigation. That is what page to page navigation we are trying. But as per this MVC, what is the point here? In MVC based applications, we can provide more than one JSP page as a viewport. But we must not provide page to page communication. We must not provide page to page communication, where we must provide page controller page communication. What is the meaning of it now? The total flow of execution is going on with the controller only. If you click on a hyperlink, or if you click on any button in a particular HTML page or JSP page, immediately request must be go through what they know, controller. not to other JSP page. No, that's what I'm telling there. Page to page communication is not possible. Where we must provide which communication there? No, page controller page communication. If I click on hyperlink in one page, now request will go to the controller. Now controller will will forward that request to the target page. Now. So, but not like a page-to-page communication. It should be like what now? Page controller page. If we provide page controller page communication, then automatically we are giving some importance for controller or not. That means every flow of execution must be known by controller or not. Every flow of execution must be awaited by controller or not. So here in MVC based web applications, page-to-page communication is not suggestible. In place of that, we have to provide like what there? Page controller page communication. Right, sir? Now these are the various rules and regulations what we have to follow about to prepare MVC based applications. Tell me, what are the various rules and regulations here we provided there? What are the various rules and regulations here we provided there? Now here, MVC rules and regulations, I'm telling the rule number 1. In MVC based applications, we must use a serverless controller. We must use a serverless controller and a set of JSP pages as what their viewport. Next one is in MVC based applications, every request must be submitted to the controller only and every response must be generated by viewport. Next one is in MVC based web applications, controller must interact with the database through model component only. Controller must interact with the database through model component only. Not possible to interact with the databases directly. Not possible to interact with the databases directly. Okay. In MVC based applications, controller will interact with the model component in order to set the data, not to get the data. But JSP pages will interact with the model component to get the data, not to set the data. But in the flow diagram, I given arrows like this also. But they are for different purpose, not to set the data, not to get the data. But controller is interacting with the model component to set the data. Of course, after executing business logic, flow of execution will come back to the controller. That's okay. But it's not the meaning of getting the data. It's the meaning of setting the data only. View part is interacting with the database, is interacting with the model component for getting the data, not to set the data. Why? Because data will come to the controller part first. So controller is responsible to set the data. Viewport is mainly for what purpose? There generating response. Generating response purpose only viewport is existed here. Right, sir. In MVC based applications, we have to prepare number of JSP pages as per the requirement. But all the JSP pages must be prepared without Java code. With a Java code less. Without Java code only, we have to prepare all the JSP pages. Next one. In MVC based applications, we can provide more than one JSP page as a viewport. But we must not provide page to page communication directly. There we have to provide page controller page communication. That means every flow of execution must be awaited by controller, must be through controller only. That's an official concept inside like what now? MVC architecture. Sir, all of you getting my point or not? Okay. Now here, I want to ask one important interview question. Try to answer for it. Everybody, you have to answer for my question now. What exactly the answer for your question there? Observe carefully. To prepare web applications, we have already web technologies like servlets and JSPs. Like servlets and JSPs are already existed. Number 2, servers like Tomcat, WebLogic and so on, already these servers are existed. Number 3, system architectures like one-tier architecture, two-tier architecture and so on. Number 4, modeled architectures like model 1, and model 2. Number 5, MVC architecture, right? MVC architecture. To prepare web applications, we have already web technologies like servlets and JSPs and web servers like Tomcat and some application server WebLogic. System architectures like tier 1, that means 1 tier, 2 tier, 3 tier architecture. Next one is a model architecture like model 1 and model 2 and MVC architecture. To prepare web applications, these many architectures are existed. If it is the case, then what is the requirement? What is the requirement? What is the requirement to use frameworks? This is my question. Yes, all of you understand this question now? What is the question here I'm asking there? To prepare web applications, we have already web technologies like servers and JSPs, servers like Tomcat, WebLogic, and so on. System architectures like 1 tier, 2 tier, and so on. Modeled architecture like model 1 and model 2, MVC architecture, and so on. Then, what is the requirement to use frameworks? What is the need to go for frameworks? Right, sir? What is the answer for it? MVC architecture. To avoid redundant tools. Nice. And then apart from that, so why we need to go for frameworks? Over all these concepts, up to now I discussed about modeled architectures, MVC architecture, system architectures like Tomcat and WebLogic servers, and web technologies like servlets and JSPs. You might be completed in advanced Java. But over all these things, what is the requirement to go for frameworks? Okay. Right, sir. Now, anyway, I'll give some answers there. Try to understand it clearly. I'll give some answer. Now, try to understand this. Yeah, this is a question now. Yeah, to avoid request wrapping and boilerplate pieces of code. Nice. That's okay. Apart from that, I'm telling now. I'll give some examples with I will give some examples first. Then through that, I will explain that what is the requirement to go for frameworks. All of you understand this clearly. I want to prepare a simple MVC based application. Very simple MVC based application. Or try to observe this clearly. Now this is nothing but what their controller. Okay. Now number of forms here we are going to take. This is one form. This is another form. This is a third form. Say for example, add form dot HTML. HTML or JSP, that doesn't matter. Next one is like what there, search form dot HTML. Next one is delete form dot HTML. This is controller. Controller is what there, a servlet. Controller is what now, a servlet. At the same time, here we have some implementations. Add implementation, search implementation, and delete implementations. Number of implementations are existed here. Or action classes, whatever it may be. Some action classes or some implementations are available. Now this is like what add, this is like what there search, and this is like what there not delete. Update I have not included. Anyway, we can observe carefully. For example, if I submit request to the controller, what this controller will do now? Controller will check if the request is coming for add. If the request is coming for add, then immediately controller will bypass that request to add module, where the respective things are going on here. Which things are going on here now? Inside this add module, maybe we can understand some validations are going on. Validations are required or not? Server side validations are required or not? Validations. Apart from this validation, some exception handling is required. At server side, exception handling service is required or not? Internationalization service is required. I-18N. All the things must be performed or not? To complete this add module, these many things here we have to perform. To complete all these things here, we need to perform all this. That's okay. By performing this, some business logic is also be executed. Business logic is also be executed. Then automatically we are able to get some content clearly. Okay, fine. For example, if the request is coming from search form.html, there also be what you are able to understand. If the request is for search, if the request is for what there search, guys, just 1 minute, no. Guys, please confirm to me. All of you get my voice on screen. Please, all of you respond for me. All of you get my voice on screen now. Is my voice is clear? Yes. Smita Yadav. Smita Yadav. Just from your side only. Just check it. Everybody is getting voice clearly. Just take 1 minute of time, then you will get it. Don't worry. I think now only you joined. I think so. Then take 1 minute of time, then you can get it. Yeah. Definitely I'll upload. Don't worry for it. Okay, fine. All right, sir. Now, if the request is coming for search module, then immediately which module will be executed here now? The search module will be executed. Inside the search module, again, what we have to provide there? For the data, we need to validate. So data validations we required. Next one is the security is also be required for the data. Next one is like what there? Internationalization here we have to provide. Then after that, exception handling is also be required. All the things are required or not? Definitely all the things are required. Next one, similarly, if I submit a request from delete form to controller, you know already every request must be taken by controller. So now here, if it is the request for delete, automatically that controller will bypass that code to delete module. Inside this delete module, what we are having there? Data validations. Again here security is required or not? And again I18N, then what next one here apart from that exception handling? So many things are existed here. This is one example. I'm asking one question to you now, try to answer for it. What is the job of the controller in this example? Taking all requests, checking these requests are coming for which module, and bypassing that request to the respective module. In the module, some services here we required. What services we required here inside the modules now? Data validations and exception handling, internationalization, like security, all the services we required. With all the services only, we are going to generate some response back to the respective client. Okay, this is one example. Leave this example, guys. Then I want to go for another example. Any example, any simple example. For example, now I want to go for mail page. I have to go for a mail page. Okay. Now here this is a client, and here this is like what the controller. Now here number of modules are existed. What modules are existed here? Now this is client, controller. Now here I want to say in a client, this is like what their compose button. Mails, when we open the Gmail there, where compose button is available or not? Next one is like what their inbox. Next one is what their outbox or maybe sent. Alright, these many options are available or not? Buttons are exist or not? Inbox and sent, these many things. Now with respect to these, we have some action classes, or we are having some server side modules. What are these modules actually? First one is like what their compose module. Next one is like what their inbox modules. Next sent module. Okay. Now here, what is the scenario here? Again, the same scenario. When I click on this compose button, automatically a request will come to the controller. Again, what this controller will do there? No, controller will do the same process. If it is for compose, then immediately that request will be forwarded to compose module. Inside this compose module, then what we have to do there again? Security. Then apart from the security, then what next one you know? In a compose module, internationalization. Then after that, exception handling, and so on. All the things here we require. Similarly, when I click on inbox, again request will come to what? Controller. At a controller, if you observe this, if the request is coming for inbox, automatically the request will come to the inbox module. There again, the similar things are existed here. Security service has to be implemented. Apart from this, internationalization. Apart from this, exception handling. Similarly, when I click on the send button, request will come to controller. Here also be, if the request is coming for sent, here also be, that request will be bypassed to sent module. Now there also we here what we require there, we can observe carefully. Security is required and I18N is required, exception handling. These many things are required. Okay, how many applications I prepared now? 2 applications I prepared. Just observe this both the applications now. One is add form, search form, delete. What is the job of the controller? Takes the request and bypass that request to the respective module component. That's one thing. Now here at each and every module, which things are very common here now? Validations and exception handling, security, internationalization. These things are very much common. Got it or not? Okay. Like this, we can prepare 100 number of applications, 100 MVC based applications we can prepare. In all the 100 number of applications, which things are common and which things are not common there? In all 100 number of applications, MVC applications, if we take now, which things are common and which things are not common there? Controller is common or not? Controller work is common or not? What is the work of this controller? Getting the request, identifying to which module these requests are coming, forwarding that request to the respective module. Next one, at each and every module, these services are very much common or not? Exception handling maybe, validations maybe, and internationalization maybe. Like at each and every module, these services are common or not? Observe carefully. Preparing controller. Control is a common component. At each and every module, some services. These services are called as a generic services. All these generic services are common or not? All right, sir. Now, how many applications you are trying to prepare? Hundreds and hundreds of applications I'm trying to prepare. Even though we are preparing 100 number of applications, no? But each and every application, we have to prepare controller and we have to prepare all the generic services or not? So manually, if we are trying to prepare these components now, automatically lot of time it will take or not. And moreover, in this total MVC applications now, 50% of the implementation is available inside this controller only. That means controller will occupy 50% of the implementation. The remaining services are existed here. Almost 50% of the application is associated with the controller and its generic services or not. Remaining 50% like preparing these forms, preparing some Java classes internally, that is the remaining 50. That means half of the application is common from one application to another application or not? Half of the implementation is common from one application to another application or not? That's my point here. So if we use this approach as it is, where code redundancy will be increased. What is going to be increased there? No, code redundancy. Definitely duplicate components are going to be utilized. 100 applications I want to prepare. In all 100 applications, separately we have to prepare controller or not? Separately servlet here we have to prepare or not? So application to application, application to application, same components we have to prepare. For same components, we have to write the code. This is a problem here. To overcome this problem, we need to go for an alternative. To overcome this problem here, we have to go for alternative. Definitely some configurations are also required internally. Okay, to overcome this problem, we need to go for an alternative. What is that alternative there? No, from application to application, which things are common? Which things are common? I want to make them as default. Which things are common from application to application? I want to make them as default. Predefined, I want to make available these commonalities. And before going to provide this, now tell me, we are using servlets and JSP's technologies. Are the servlets and JSP's technologies are providing these components as a default components? For example, is servlet is providing any controller servlet as a predefined class? No. Are JSP page are providing any controller JSP page? No. No, leave this one. Technologies are not possible. Okay, then what next one here? If technologies are not possible, what next one here? Now tell me here, apart from this, no, technologies are not possible here. That's okay. Next one is what there after these technologies, then what next one here? No, we can observe carefully. Servlets and JSP are not possible. Next one is a Tomcat and WebLogic server. Are the servers are providing any controller servlet and some these services? No, little bit that services are provided, but controller servlet is not provided by all the servers are not. Okay, with servers also be solution is not available. System architectures are giving some guidelines to implement this architecture like this, but they are not providing any services to us. They are not providing any servlet also. Model architectures like model 1 and model 2, are these architectures are providing any separate servlet component or separate generic services? No, no, they are the theory. The theory is not providing anything for us. No. MVC architecture, is that MVC architecture is providing any such type of reusable components as a predefined components? No, no. Servlet, that means MVC architecture is also be not provided. In this particular scenario, we are expecting this controller servlet and some generic services as a predefined one. If any person is providing these things as a predefined one, automatically my work will be very simple or not. If I want to develop any project, first we have to think about controller. Then after that we have to think about all generic services. Then only we will move to the application development. But for preparing controller, for preparing these generic services may take a lot of time. After that lot of time only people are moving for development part, actual development part. But here that alternative here, what I'm telling there, in this case, what is that alternative here I'm telling there? Instead of preparing these commonalities manually, if any person is providing these commonalities as a predefined, then as a developer, I will use that commonalities from some third party, and I'm going to start my application execution effectively. If any third person is providing this predefined thing, that means this commonalities as a predefined things now, then automatically we can collect it, we can get it now. Answer my point here now. But here, if third person up to now no third person is providing these commonalities here, so we prepared manually. But if any third person is providing these things now, we will use them and we are going to utilize them. We are not going to re-prepare them. Already one person has provided them. We are going to reuse it. We are not going to re-prepare them. Right, sir? Exactly. In this case, the third person is already that third persons are available. The third persons are providing these common components as predefined things now. Now here the third component is called as, the third person is called as like what now? Frameworks. The third person is like what now? Frameworks. That's it. Framework is not another one. The third person is like what now? Frameworks. Observe carefully. What is the point here I'm telling to you? From application to application, from application to application, controller servlet, generic services like exception handling, security, or maybe exception handling, security, data validations, and so on. From application to application, controller servlet, generic services like exception handling, security, data validations, and so on, are maybe third one are very much common. very much common, right sir? Preparing these common components manually may take lot of time. It is not suggestible. It is not suggestible. Right sir, what we have to do there in the above context, in the above context, in the above context, if any third party organizations have provided, if any third party organizations have provided all these common, all these common things as predefined, then developers work will be very simple. If all these things are provided any third party organizations, then it is very simple to complete our developer work, development work here. Exactly. In the above context, to provide all the commonalities predefinedly, to provide all the commonalities predefinedly, third parties are providing a separate tool, a separate component, or a separate implementations, that is frameworks. That's it. Now frameworks are provided by third party organizations, not by Java. Inside the Java, no such type of third party components are existed here. Third party implementations are not available inside the Java. So now that third party component is like what now? Frameworks. What frameworks are providing in general? What frameworks are providing in general? What is advantages of frameworks? If you observe this clearly, first one is like what there, it able to provide controller servlet by default, predefined controller servlet it able to provide, not required to prepare servlets, controller servlets manually. By default that frameworks are providing controller servlets. Collection framework is different, just don't compare that collection framework with these frameworks now. Okay, now controller servlet. Next one is all generic services like security maybe, then after this security, next one is like what there, internationalization, next one is exception handling, all this and so on, all the generic services like security, internationalization, exception handling and so on. Next one is standard flow of executions, between the components, say for example controller to model, standard flow of execution, model to page, standard flow of execution, where frameworks will define the standard flow of execution between the components. Answer my point here clearly. Then apart from this, then what next one here, the fourth point is like what there, apart from this, it able to provide flow of executions are okay, the flow of executions it able to provide between the components now. Then apart from this, all the generic services are provided, controller servlet is also be provided, and it will provide a standard template to prepare web applications. It able to provide standard templates to prepare web applications. These many advantages and so on, so many advantages are available. These many advantages we are able to get from these frameworks. Simply what I am telling to you, without frameworks, if we prepare any application, it may take 10 years of time to complete it. But with the frameworks, if we design the same application there, same project, within 5 years of time, we can complete it. Without frameworks, 10 years of time. With the frameworks, like maybe 5 years of time. The total, it able to reduce the total development time or not? Reduces development time or not? When development time is reduced, automatically productivity will be improved or not? Improves productivity in the sense like what there, within less time more product, Within less time, getting more. That is nothing but what? No, productivity will be improved. Right. So these are the various advantages here we are able to get from these frameworks. Right. So that's okay. Fine. After getting these advantages, now types of frameworks. Types of frameworks. What are the various types of frameworks are existed here? There are actually two types of frameworks are available. First one is web frameworks, and the second one is application frameworks. Two types of frameworks are available. First one is like what their web framework. Second one is like what their application frameworks. Invasive or non-invasive not required. No, just understand these two types of frameworks as of now. Later on we will talk about invasive and non-invasive. Right, sir. Then what is the difference between web frameworks and application framework? This is one of the interview question. What is the difference between web frameworks and application frameworks? Right, sir. Answers are very clear. Try to understand this clearly. What is the difference between web frameworks and application frameworks? Now, I'm asking one question to all of you guys. Now, tell me, what is the difference between web server and application server? You know already, for our serverless applications, we are using some servers there. What is the difference between web server and application server? Web servers will provide environment for only executing web applications, but application servers will provide environment for executing like web applications and as well as like what now distributed applications. Similarly, what I'm telling there, web frameworks will provide very good environment to design and execute web applications only. Web frameworks will provide very good environment to design and execute web applications only. Example frameworks I'm telling there, struts. Next one is what the JSF and so on, if anything is existed. Okay, struts, JSF, all these things are like what now? Web frameworks. Next one. What about this application framework? No, application frameworks are able to provide very good environment. Application frameworks are able to provide very good environment to design and execute all the types of applications. All the types of applications, including standalone applications, not only enterprise applications, including standalone applications. Next one is web applications, and next one is like database applications, database related applications, and next one is like what there distributed applications, and so on and so on and so on. Application servers will are able to provide very good environment to design and execute all the types of applications, including standalone applications, web applications, database related applications, distributed applications, and so on. All the types of applications here we are able to prepare. Now, example for application framework is what? Spring. Example for application framework is what there? Spring. Yes, sir. Got my point or not? So this is in this location I'm trying to introduce the Spring framework. If it is a class for struts, no, here itself I will go for direction for what there, no, struts. If it is a class for JSF, here itself I will go for JSF. If it is a class for Spring, then I have to talk about like what there, no, Spring framework. Now tell me, if I ask a question to you, what is the main difference between Spring and struts? If I ask this question, no, then what is your answer here? Answer would be very clear. Spring is an application framework, whereas the struts is what they know, MVC based framework, that is a web framework. Struts is a web framework, whereas Spring is what now? Application framework. So still, what is the difference between web framework and as well as application framework? That means Spring and Struts. What is the meaning of these web frameworks and what is the meaning of application framework now? Web framework is available for only web applications, whereas application frameworks will be available for all the types of applications. So Spring can be used to prepare standalone applications, web applications, database applications, anything. But Struts can be used to prepare only web applications, not possible with any other applications. Right, sir. Now this is one difference here we can understand. Similarly, the same differences we can understand for what they know JSF. Anyway, not more than this. This information is sufficient. Clearly, you'll understand this information is sufficient for us. So because of this reason only, see, for example, Struts and JSF are not available in the market. No demand is available. Why? Because at the starting point of the Spring framework, Struts framework is having very good demand. In a Struts framework, we used to say flow of execution. At least if you say that a Struts flow of execution to the interviewer, they're giving jobs. By the time that much of demand is there for Struts framework. But when a Spring framework is coming into the picture, when a Spring framework was provided to the market, when its a functionality is exposed to the market, gradually, automatically, Struts framework demand was reduced. Then Spring framework demand is still going on. Understand clearly? Why? Because what is the reason here now? Struts will be used for only web application development, but the Spring can be used for what there? All the types of applications here we can prepare. Not only that, if we take any enterprise application, web module is required, distributed application development is required, business logic, database logic here we have to prepare. Am I right or not? But if we take Struts framework, what it able to provide there? Struts framework is able to provide max web module. Remaining modules are not covered by Struts framework. But if we take this Spring framework now, it will cover each and every corner of the enterprise application. Every part of the enterprise application we can prepare by using what their Spring framework. Because of this reason, Spring framework is getting more demand in outside when compared with the Struts framework, when compared with the web frameworks. Web frameworks are almost all gone in outside, but still there is a demand for what they know application frameworks like what their Spring framework. This is what exactly the requirement to go for like what no Spring framework. Now here I can ask some questions there. Tell me the differences between Struts framework and Spring framework. Tell me the differences between JSF framework and Spring framework. By this we can understand why Spring is good when compared with the Struts. Why Spring is very good when compared with the JSF. Then we will understand that. Then after that we are going to talk about Spring framework version details and content, what content is available, that everything we are able to understand clearly. Yes, all of you are getting clarity or not? So this is that overall view, that what is the intention, what is the requirement of the Spring framework in outside, and why this Spring framework is getting more demand in outside. All the points can be understood clearly. Right, sir? Okay, fine. That's okay, guys, and that is the information today. Then tomorrow I'll go for more content. Tomorrow I will discuss about Spring framework, Spring information. I'm going to talk there after understanding the differences between all. Then after that we'll go for Spring modules and Spring versions. Then after that we are going to start application development in Spring framework. Still it is an introduction part only. Then tomorrow onwards we are going to talk especially for Spring. All the generalized contents are completed. Just only we are going to talk about Spring framework, that we are going to see there clearly. Right, sir? Thank you. Thanks a lot. You'll see the remaining content tomorrow. Alok, and if possible, cover basic architecture of JSF and Struts. Definitely. Alok, and meanwhile, what I'm telling there, if possible, then my Struts and JSF architecture level videos are available in YouTube. Long time back, I shoot that videos there. Please check once so that you will get it. In YouTube, that content is existed there. Then try to check once. Yeah, my Struts flow of execution and JSF flow of execution, they're available. Both are available. I discussed some content there. Please check meanwhile. Duration of these topics. Duration for topic wise, no. Topic wise, not prepared so far. Vishnu Reddy. Just the overall duration for this is on 4 months of time. 4 months of time I will take them. Hello, please check once there, then start framework and all, then you'll understand. Otherwise, maybe if it is possible, I'll explain. Don't worry for it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you guys. Thanks a lot. Then guys, and if you want to go for that fee structure and everything, just better to talk with Bhavani. She is available in this number. Yes, Smita Yadav. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, a system architecture wise, three-tier architecture, right? Application architecture point of view, MVC. Yes, good. Right. Perfect. Melvin Ross. Right. Thank you. Guys, and fee related issues, just you can talk with Bhavan through this number, or we can send request mail to this number, then you will get response. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you guys. Thanks a lot. We'll meet on tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll see the remaining content. Yeah, then Nikita ma'am. Then if you have any doubts there, I'll create a channel. Don't worry. Then I will talk with you. Tomorrow I will create a channel, and through that I will. You can send the doubts also there. Yeah. Or else then here itself you can type your doubts in the questions box. Continuously I'm watching your doubts and your questions there. Then I can give reply. Thank you. Right, guys. Anything else? I'll meet you tomorrow. No, no, Spring and Spring Boot not immediately because and I need to complete Spring framework. Then only we'll go for Spring Boot. Yeah, this is very starting point of the Spring. Without having awareness on Spring internal content, not possible to discuss that Spring Boot now. Then maybe at the end of the Spring I will discuss. When I'm going to start Spring Boot topic, there I will discuss about Spring and Spring Boot differences. Okay, thank you. Right, guys. Anything else? Yeah, Spring Cloud also. Abhishek. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Spring Boot and microservices duration maybe uh, 45 days of time, 45 more than 45 days. The nearly 40 to 45 days of time. This is Spring framework and 45 to 2 months of time for Spring Boot microservices. After 1 month of time, parallel at 10 o'clock, I will start Hibernate and web services. After 1 month of time, I'll start parallelly Hibernate and web services at 10 o'clock, 10 to 11:30, and 11:31, I will continue Spring Boot microservices. Right. Right, guys. Anything else? Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot. We'll meet you tomorrow.